I can see that one of my players who used to be very active on field seems to be facing some issues of late with regard to her motivation and regularity. She also has started to complain a lot more about pains and cramps during the session. I think this might be a gynecological issue, but I do not know how to interact with her. I want to help. How should I start talking about something like this?
You have also had this thought at some point regarding one of your athletes, isn't it?
There are indeed 5 golden rules about how you can have a very healthy conversation about periods.
Educate yourself. It is very important to clearly understand the science behind periods. Learn and use correct terms. Referring to the correct biological terms is very important. It builds the necessary confidence. Be a good listener. Hear the questions with full attention. Take a pause and avoid giving hasty answers. Be extremely honest. If you do not know the answer, ask for time and do get back as soon as possible. Positive body language. Be extremely relaxed. Maintain eye contact. Speak in an open area and not in a closed environment.
Now that you've learned how one can easily talk about periods, let's also try to understand the real science behind the question. What is a period? Let's start by getting introduced to some basics of the female reproductive system. We all know that the primary function of the reproductive system is to provide an environment to facilitate the growth of a healthy baby. But how does it really work? The ovaries facilitates the formation and release of the egg that can get fertilized. The fallopian tube transports this egg and safeguards it till it gets fertilized. The uterus actually develops the fetus, that is the baby, inside the womb. The cervix provides protection to the baby throughout its development inside the womb. And the vagina finally facilitates the process of childbirth after a period of about 9 months. But what are periods then? It is important to first note that this is a natural process. It indicates a healthy functioning reproductive system, so you should never be scared or nervous about it in general. As we saw earlier, the ovary releases an egg for fertilization. This happens once every month. The body starts to prepare for pregnancy. As a result of this, the lining of the uterus starts to thicken to protect the fetus that might be formed. But what if the egg does not get fertilized? The body no longer needs the thick lining, and it gets expelled from the system along with some blood that accompanies it.
This is what she experiences as period. Periods can begin anytime between the ages of 10 and 16, averagely around 12 and a half years in most women.
Before or during the onset of the period, she might experience one or many of these symptoms: increased hunger, back or body pain, stomach issues like pain, constipation or bloating, sudden mood changes, headache, fatigue, and inability to sleep well.
To be able to help her manage the symptoms of her period better, let's take 1 minute to understand how the cycle works and what are the 3 main phases that she goes through every month.
There are 3 hormones that the body produces: estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, which keep fluctuating through the month, causing the 3 different phases.
Follicular phase. This phase begins with her period onset and continues for 14 days, where her hormone levels are reasonably lower. Ovulation phase. This is the 14th day of the cycle, where ovulation occurs suddenly, spiking up her estrogen levels. Luteal phase. This is a phase after ovulation till her next period, where both her estrogen and progesterone levels are fairly elevated and she experiences most of her PMS symptoms before her next cycle. While during most months she'll be able to deal with the symptom by herself, it is very important to watch out for these which warrant getting checked by a doctor immediately.
Periods become suddenly irregular after a phase of regular periods. Periods occur more often than every 21 days or less often than every 35 days. Periods are irregular with an inability to get pregnant. And periods consistently last for longer than 7 days on average. The right nutritional interventions at the right time can make a lot of difference to her well-being and performance.
Make sure that she distributes food and snacks throughout the day to support her training and recovery. More than half of her daily intake should be slow-digesting whole grains. Make sure she eats a light carbohydrate snack 45 minutes prior to her workouts and always stays hydrated before starting her training. During training sessions, she should consume fluids with electrolytes and add salt, sugar, or jaggery. Eating right after a workout is most critical.
Now you'd be thinking, do I need to ask her to eat something specific during, before, or after period to stay healthier and feel happier? Yes, here are some tips for you.
Before the period, avoid giving her refined sugars and processed foods. Include fiber-rich fruits and healthy vegetables. Eating foods like nuts, beans, and lentils will help her iron levels up. Ask her to avoid drinking too much coffee during the period. Focus on diets that boost her energy levels. Eating foods like beans, milk, cheese, fish will replenish her B12 and iron levels. Completely avoid soda drinks or cold beverages and include turmeric or ginger in her intake to relieve symptoms. After the period, focus on estrogen-producing foods to help her boost her mood. Go for calcium-rich foods like spinach or pumpkin. It's important for her to keep eating regularly despite her hunger reducing during this phase.
It is also very natural to have a lot of anxiety because of the changes that are happening in her body and the new experiences she's getting exposed to suddenly. But do not worry. These emotions can be very well managed and she can certainly go back to being her cheerful self. Please share these sets of techniques and exercises with her to make her feel better.
Awareness. Observe the changes in her body during each cycle very closely. Note down what exactly makes her feel better or worse during the symptoms. Establish how hard she should push her body during each phase. Acceptance. Acknowledge that these processes and symptoms are going to repeat. Learn to recognize and separate the psychological symptoms that appear. Do not neglect any symptoms or try to just wish them away. Adaptation. Make her understand that both body and mind are capable of adapting to all kinds of changes. Teach her to motivate herself to be at ease. Be flexible in changing her routines based on the kind of symptoms that appear each month. We'll now tell you 3 simple techniques to help her relax and feel healthier and happier. Following all these tips, we're sure that she'd feel far more confident in dealing with her symptoms, and that is sure to reflect in her being a lot more cheerful and also in her performance in training and tournaments. We would like to leave you with just one thought at the end. Menstruation is not something that you need to feel ashamed of at all. It's important to be open about the challenges that she's facing and be able to communicate confidently about them. It's not something that's unusual. It's simply periods.